Hello all. Today we would be discussing about the influence of Persianate statecraft in medieval India, the transformation from feudal decentralization to centralized absolutism, how that influenced Indian history very profoundly. The Indian state as it developed from around the middle of the first century BC developed as a weak state, and some of the most important reasons for that were the influence of the dharmic law, which worked to limit the power of the state. A dharmic class essentially circumscribed the uh, power of the state, and the legitimacy of the state was dependent on the following of the dharmic law. So India essentially developed, unlike China, uh, as a state with a rule of law. The rule of law was essentially embedded, and that led to the creation of weak absolutist states. Moreover, the ruling class and the religious class were different, and the religious class worked to legitimize the ruling class, at the same time also worked at constraining its power of action. Secondly, this weak state essentially led to decentralization tendencies early on. So we have the example of a fairly centralized Mauryan Empire, which did not last a long time, and it did not lead to creation of later centralized institutions the way it did in China. Also, the ruling class was largely patrimonial, which again worked to limit the power of the state. The later medieval or later ancient or early medieval period is marked by even more decentralization. The Rajput model or the federal feudal model, where the state was based on clan uh, identities. So authority was based essentially on kinship, and the king was only the first among the equals. The king was essentially seen as a great brother rather than a great father. And the loyalty of the the nobility was essentially dependent on these relations. So that again worked, as you can see from this map, that India was very decentralized, uh, divided into smaller kingdoms around the 10th century. Now, what we see is a paradigm shift with the coming of the Turks. The Turks were not uncivilized brutes. They were a Persianized elite. They were city dwellers. They were a literate people, and they came with many new technologies into India. They introduced many new technology into India. They were essentially riding on the back of the Arab Golden Age, and this Arab Golden Age was informed by the Persian statecraft, and uh, in a way, the Islamic civilization internalized the Persian statecraft. So the larger Muslim world was influenced by the Persianate ideas of royal authority and practices. So what we see is the authority which was based on a divine right, and uh, secondly, the bureaucracy. It created a nobility made of slaves, and this slave nobility was non-patrimonial in nature. The loyalty of the slave ruling class, the slave nobility, was to the king or to the sultan. So what we see is creation of a strong centralized state, uh, in the 13th, 14th centuries, most significantly expressed in the personalities of Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Now, Alauddin Khilji instituted market reforms, which was something unheard of, which was something uh, utterly uh, amazing in Indian history. We have never seen a king so powerful. And then we also had Muhammad bin Tughlaq, whose many experiments like token currency, his experiment of changing the capital, exemplify the royal power and how that royal power was used to bend the society, as it were, to its will. So the sovereignty was placed over and above clan or religious loyalties, and it was not bound by religious traditions or the religious classes. With the coming of the Mughals, we have a new sort of uh, even more centralized despotism coming to India, a superior form of royal absolutism. Now, what were the mechanism that was used to create this centralized state? One was obviously the slave nobility, the Mamluks. The second was Ikta system. Ikta system Iktas were military cum revenue assignments, and they were given to senior nobles, and they were transferred. It was transferable at the will of the sovereign, at the will of the sultan or the king. The Mughals further refined the system into Mansabdari Jagirdari system, and this led to an element of bureaucratization within the overall patrimonial uh, system. So that helped in creating a centralized state. Now, the Mansabdari hierarchy was obviously a dual hierarchy based on Zat and Sawar ranks and was inspired by the Mongol system. It was meritocratic. Many Mansabdars coming from lower lineages or comparatively simple backgrounds rose on the basis of their ability, because the most important criteria was loyalty as well as ability. Now, obviously, this idea has been debated by many historians whether this was really a very bureaucratic system, or it was patrimonial bureaucratic, or whether it was just a performance. But one thing is sure is that the Persianate statecraft helped in creation of a powerful centralized state in medieval India. Thank you.